in. So just a quick note, this meeting is going to be recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, we request that you jump off, but this will be posted on SABR's website, and we'll share it on the SABR Chicago social media. So again, we'll have some more people joining as we get rolling. I think everybody's muted. So if you can, just for audio quality, if you can keep yourself muted during the discussion. But if you have questions, please unmute yourself, feel free. I'd like this to be a very interactive discussion. If you feel more comfortable submitting a question on the chat, I will be monitoring that to the best of my ability, and we'll try to weave those questions in. I have a whole list of my own questions, but by no means are we limited to that. So let's take advantage of this. So I am pleased to welcome Cody Decker, former major leaguer, current baseball analyst. We were just talking a little bit about, you may have heard his appearances on 670 AM The Score in Chicago, on Bernstein and Rahimi. You might have seen him on MLB Network before it was just showing classic games at this point. Again, it's going to be recorded. So I'm going to start off with a few questions. And again, if you have questions, send them in the chat or unmute yourself and then chime in. All right, ready? So I wanted to start off really quickly. So Cody, who were some of the players that inspired you learning the game growing up?
Immediately, the names that immediately come to mind are Reggie Smith is the first one right out the gate. I would say Reggie Smith was my mentor from the age of 8 till roughly 22. He kind of looked out for me, gave me a lot of great information about hitting and baseball. I got to see the pro side of the game at a very, very young age. I got to rub shoulders with major league players, and I got to train with, up and coming college players and future major league players as well at the age of 12. I was playing with 18-year-old guys entering the major league draft when I was a 12-year-old kid. And to me at the time, I was a stupid kid. What did I know? I thought that was normal. It turns out it's not normal. And I was extraordinarily lucky that I got the at the time, Los Angeles Dodgers hitting coach and, baseball legend that is Reggie Smith, at one point, second all time in switch hitting home runs. I think it's like 325. He's a legendary human being on top of that. He was a big person in my not only my career, but my life. Another guy that comes to mind is a little known person that's nowhere near the name recognition or echelon of Reggie Smith, a guy named Jimmy Lewis. Jim Lewis was my hitting coach on the side as well. This guy just worked with me in Santa Monica, California, where I grew up, 4 days a week, sometimes twice a day if I requested, never his request. It was always my request. I just, those two people probably had the greatest impact of my baseball career and my baseball life, other than, of course, my parents, my mom and dad. Obviously, I think every parent every guy who's played professional baseball has a lot of thanking to do for their parents, because baseball is exceedingly expensive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Especially these days with travel, which, going back to my era, travel was traveling from other parks across town. You weren't doing quite the extensive trips. So yeah, there's definitely fundraising that's involved with a lot of the teams these days that just didn't exist. So
it's a hell of a racket these days, that travel ball thing, man. They get you early and they make you play year round, which I cannot stress enough. If any of you guys have kids, do not let them play baseball year round under the age of 12. Let them enjoy being a kid. Actually, that reminds me, I was playing travel ball. I think when I was coming up, 9 to 12-year-olds, that was kind of the early stages of what I think is the modern world of travel ball. I played for a team called the SoCal Angels at the age of 9, and they were a bunch of 12-year-olds. And this team truly believed they were taking on the New York Yankees the next week. They believed that the world revolved around them, and it was, quite frankly, the first ever toxic experience I ever had in baseball. And I had it at a young age. So I was glad I had it at that age. But at that age, it made me hate baseball. I all of a sudden, and I remember one time my mom was trying to take me to a game to play with them, and I was miserable and I didn't want to go. And I remember I was like crying. All I wanted to do was go and watch the Super Bowl with my friends at their house. But I had a game in a tournament that day on a team I was miserable on at the age of 10. And I think that was the first time, because I was very good, obviously, as a 10-year-old. But I think that was the first time where I started freaking out. My mom kind of like backed up and realized, oh no, this is far too much. And from that point on, they never really pushed me into baseball again. It was all my own volition, my own work. They were there to support me from that point on. And I think every parent in this situation has got to go through those same growing pains as anybody else.
Sure, sure. Well, along those lines, you mentioned having a coach play a very pivotal role. Was there any specific piece of advice or tip that he had passed along to you that really resonated with you, that made a difference?
No, believe it or not, nothing really comes to mind that is like, here's a life lesson you can learn. At the end of the day with Reggie, it was always, and this is what I love about Reggie, I know more than you, the end, never question me. And that's the majority of old school baseball people. And I love that about them, even though half the time they're wrong. Actually, I'd say more than half the time they're wrong, but I love the arrogance. It's just, I love Reggie to death. He's the greatest, but no, I wouldn't say any particular advice. It was just more or less nuggets of knowledge piece by piece. He is a brilliant man. He's probably a certifiable genius. In fact, he always gave wonderful moments that would pass up. But believe it or not, I learned more from my terrible coaches than I ever did from a good coach. I learned a roadmap of what never to do from a lot of truly awful coaches.
Wow. Yeah, I think some of my coaches taught us more of the 4-letter words than any actual baseball skills.
Oh yeah, plenty of that. But that didn't necessarily make. I had great coaches that taught me mostly 4-letter words as well. But
right.
Yeah, it's funny how you can take just as much away from a bad coach as you can a good coach. It's just going to be a much more frustrating time.
Sure. So you're talking a little bit more about you as a player. At what point did you realize you had the ability, you had the talent to play at a higher level? Because I was having a discussion with a friend a few weeks ago that, in high school, we all thought we were going to the major leagues. And I knew my moment of when I couldn't hit an 80-mile-an-hour fastball, that my career was done. And the fact that I was 5'5", so it was limited pretty early on. But when did you have that sense that you can actually get to the game?
There were two moments. And funny enough, they were both moments that involved Reggie Smith. I always knew I was far and away better than everybody else in my city in Santa Monica, which I'm not going to lie, that is a very low bar to reach. Santa Monica is not a baseball town. There's been like 5 big leaguers that have ever come out of there. I think it's like me, Tyler Skaggs, Tim Leary, and Rick Monday. And that might be, Connor Green got to the big leagues last year. So I think that's the 5 that came out of Santa Monica. I'm not counting Lucas Giolito because he went to Harvard Westlake. So he's a Valley kid in my eyes. Same with Max Fried. I don't care if they were born in Santa Monica. They were, that's pretty much it that's ever come out of that town. And so I'm sorry, I lost track of the actual question. Ask the question.
Oh, no, just what was that moment that you
that
realized?
moment. So that moment was when I was playing with Reggie, in fact. I was 12 years old, and we had kind of an exchange program. He had a program called Baseball Development Centers that he had through the Dodgers, and then he did it on his own called Reggie Smith Baseball Academy. And I remember he always had this exchange program with a similar academy in Japan, and they would always fly out here for a week, and we'd have basically Japan week. And it was always pretty incredible that we had that. And I'm playing against these 18-year-old Japanese players, and I'm 12 years old. And there is a college out here called Pierce College, professional dimensions. At this point, it's the first time I've ever played on 90-foot bases in a pro field. And I remember my first at bat, I hit a line drive about 300 feet in dead center on a line as 12 off a guy throwing 85. And Reggie just said, "You know what, Cody, you're actually good." And that was the first time Reggie ever said that to me. And then my next at bat, I homered over the left field wall at Pierce College, which was at that point, I'm 12. That's the farthest ball I've ever hit. And I grounded the bases again. And Reggie just looks at me and goes, "You're actually very good." And when he said that to me at 12, it was like he floored me. I'm like, "Oh my God, I must be incredible if Reggie said that to me at 12." And then later, I think I was 15. We played another thing, and Reggie at this point hadn't actually seen me play in a game in about 3 years. And now I've grown. I've hit the gym a lot. By the time I get to high school, I was basically the most muscular guy in my high school. And then it came to the point where I had a game, and I went 3 for 3 with 2 homers and a double. And Reggie just pulled me aside. He's like, you're still very good. And I'm like, thanks, Reggie. That means a lot to me. And then it turned into Reggie for the rest of my time telling me that I will never be as good as him, which he was dead right.
Tim, you had asked a question. Did you stop playing travel ball after the incident as a 10-year-old?
For a time, yes. But that travel ball experience was I can't stress, dreadful. But that was a team that was like a conglomeration of kids throughout all multiple cities. After that, I started playing on, local club teams with my friends. So I played for a team called the Beverly Hills Mariners with a bunch of guys that I ended up playing in high school with. A bunch of teams around like that. I didn't really get back into the quote unquote club ball scene, if you can call it that, until I was in pretty much in high school. I had to play more games. At that point, I got moved up to varsity when I was a freshman. My sophomore year, I led the state of California in home runs. So at that point, I was doing one of two things in high school. I was either playing baseball in some city in Arizona, Texas, or Florida, or somewhere in LA playing in a game in front of 40 scouts, or I was preparing for what the next musical that we were doing at Santa Monica High School.
Okay. So I think we talked enough about your background. Let's talk about baseball. Let's talk about the game. And we were kind of joking as we logged in. I feel like this is where I could just say go, and then we'll fill the next 4 hours and my job is done. But let's talk a little bit about the 2021 season that just ended. Mm-hmm. And it was an interesting season. After a year of having no fans, having neutral site postseason, the season started off with limited capacity, zip ties between seats, eventually opened up. The All-Star game was moved from Atlanta to Colorado. We had 2 100-plus win teams reach the postseason, and then the Braves won the World Series. What are some of your takeaways from this past year, regular season and postseason?
Well, I thought it was one of the more exciting baseball seasons I've ever seen. I had a blast from start to finish. I mean, I don't know if I've been playing for so long. I came to realize this season that I don't think I've ever actually sat down and watched a full baseball season from start to end, because I'm playing during all these games. I'm not sitting around bouncing around watching every single game. So this season was just incredibly exciting for me. I loved watching everything. I love seeing where the talent is actually going. I love seeing how teams are using their players now. It was something that was starting to happen when I was playing. And, it was always my whole career. And before that, we've always grown up with teams that, there's the third baseman, there's the second baseman, there's the shortstop, there's the first baseman, and that's your team. And more or less, that's your team going forward for the next couple of years, roughly, with a piece moved here or there. That is not really the case anymore. It's more or less, I use Jock Peterson as an example a lot. Jock Peterson, of course, when he became an all-star in 2017, monster season, was in the home run derby. And then from that point on, the next season, Jock got off to a slow start, and Jock was never used as an everyday player again for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Instead, he was used as a platoon player. Now you have the all-star being used as a platoon player, and he thrived in that position. Then you look at the rest of the Dodgers, lineup, and it's all role players, platoon players. You got Chris Taylor, you got Max Muncy filling multiple positions. It's really the only guy that plays one position is Justin Turner. And it's been honestly, it's been entertaining for me to see it. It's been fun to see how, rosters are getting manipulated and changed. I will say when it first started taking place, when I was playing, I did not react well to it, because I was a guy I'm your power guy. You put me in this spot, play me at this position, let's go. Now all of a sudden they're saying, well, Deck, we need you to play outfield today. I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that, but do you think you could teach me how to play it first? Because I haven't played outfield since I was in grade school. And I'll never forget it. My manager at the time, I swear to God, I had not taken a fly ball since I think my junior year of high school. And Pat Murphy was my manager at the time. And he just threw me an outfielder's mitt. You're playing right. I said, what? Playing right? Like, I short arm. I'm a first baseman, third baseman, catcher. I short arm my throw. I don't even have the length to throw from the outfield. And by the way, have you ever seen me throw from the outfield? It looks awful. It looks painful, because it was.
We all have a homework assignment to get on YouTube, right?
Yeah. You don't need to see me catch a fly ball. I can make fly balls in the outfield and be an adventure. I made every play, but I could really take 40 steps to a ball that was 10 feet to my left. But I'll never forget it. Pat Murphy threw me the outfielder's mitt, and I just looked at him like, okay, buddy, what do I do? And he just looks at me and he says, well, catch it before it hits the ground and throw it to somebody else.
Right.
And I just looked at him like, all right. And that's what I did. And hell, the last couple of years of my career, I was pretty much a full-time outfielder. Wasn't good, but at the end of the day, I could hit. My job was to hit homers. So anytime I cost you anything on defense, I more than made up for it 10 times over.
Sure.
But it was an exciting thing. But seeing how players and rosters, I think manipulating might be is kind of it's a negative word, because I think a lot of, the Players Association is very worried about how players are being used because of arbitration and, roster manipulation. And there is a very legitimate case to be made about that. But you can't deny the fact that the Dodgers, like you said, won 106 games. Again, the Giants won 108 games. I mean, both those teams go off of the quote unquote Rays model, and it's not the Rays model anymore. It's pretty much the Rays, Dodgers, and Giants model. I'm actually shocked everybody's not using it.
Yeah.
On top of that, the other things, the rule changes, I enjoyed those. I am of the minority here, and I'm fully aware of this. So everybody who's watching this right now, feel free to go and punch a wall or something, because I'm going to say it. I love the extra inning rule. I absolutely love it. I'm going to be very sorry to see it go. Here's why I love it. A lot of people talk about that the National League DH takes away strategy and this and that. Listen, the National League DH is coming whether you want it or not, so you might as well just get on board with it. If nothing else, I want the National League DH so we can stop talking about this ridiculous argument that is going to happen. So we're really fighting a losing battle by even suggesting.
For almost 50 years, the experiments worked, right?
Yeah, it's just at the end of the day, it works. It's what everybody wants, and it's what's coming. But I do concede that it does take away a decent amount of strategy away from the game itself. What the extra inning rule gives you is that strategy immediately. You have a runner on second base, nobody out. You have options of what you can do. And I equated a lot to the overtime for college football. You have your set of plays. If you can't get in, you go and kick the field goal. To me, that's what that runner on second base is. If you can't score that runner and get a second run, you can manufacture that run. You can bunt him over. You can hit him over. Now you have a lot of options to get that runner in. Strategy is immediately implemented into a game, and it's intense immediately. I truly do, however, understand anyone that doesn't like the rule. And I didn't like it at first, but when they first came up with this rule, I think 2018, I was playing for the Diamondbacks at the time. And I was, of course, in AAA because that's where I spent my entire career pretty much. And the rule started, and I remember the first game we did it, I saw the guy run to second base. I'm like, oh, this is so stupid. And right when it started, everyone was intense. The crowd was into it. And I just remember watching the inning take place, because we were on offense, going, this is actually brilliant. Like, this is brilliant. People say the game's not intense enough. This is instant intensity, just right out the gate. And it doesn't affect anybody's stats negatively. In fact, it only affects stats positively for the hitter, not even the pitcher. I loved the rule, and I kind of hope they bring it back, or a version of it. Perhaps you play the 10th inning normally, and that the 11th inning you implement it. Perhaps that could be something you can do. Because at the end of the day, listen, I don't think there's a single person on here who's going to sit here and pretend that they want to watch a 15-inning extravaganza.
Right. That's true.
I love baseball more than just about anything. I do not want to watch 15 innings.
Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting you mentioned that, because, the spirit of that rule is really to get those games, to prevent extra innings. Mm-hmm. And I was partially almost expecting it to make games go longer, because you can get that one run every inning. Maybe it's 2-2 going into extras, and then it's 3-3. It's just constantly tied. But that ended up not being the case. So interesting.
It actually, it worked for what the goal was. And to me, it just lended itself to other goals. And if you were going to make a pros and cons list, in my eyes, the pros outweigh the cons. Now, I do think that rule, I think they were smart about it towards the playoffs and eliminating the rule in playoffs. I think that was the right move, and just let the games play out. But during a regular season play, listen, we just watched it last year. We saw the amount of injuries that took place going from a 60-game season to a 162-game season. Pitchers' arms absolutely decimated themselves, especially with the way that pitchers throw these days. It's, everybody and their cousin throws 95 plus now. It's, the human body is being pushed to its limits in Major League Baseball. So I do think it's very important we protect those arms. And if we're not going to allow more roster moves to be taking place because we're changing the way the 40-man roster is going to be used from this point forward, then they need to come up with something to protect the players.
Mm-hmm. Well, then along those lines with the extra inning rule, how about the 7-inning doubleheaders? I know that's another polarizing issue over here, especially with the fact that we had a no-hitter after 7 innings that's not recognized.
Fun fact about that, and here's my argument against that, and this is what I don't understand about that. If you are pitching and you throw 6 full innings and it's no-hit baseball, and then the game gets rained out, what is the game called? It's a no-hitter. So why is that 6-inning no-hitter okay, but the 7-inning one is not okay? No one makes sense. Everyone's stupid. Everyone.
Would you like to be commissioner next year?
They can't afford me.
There you go. Perfect. So going back to last year, news recently broke that 2 different baseballs were used during the season. What is the impact of that? How do you think that's going to play out over time?
Well, it's going to be a disaster. It's already a nightmare. And more or less, all right, now let me give you the full scope of this. Now, you've seen a lot of reports about the baseballs over the years, and yes, it's a massive problem. And if anyone that says it's not a massive problem is lying to themselves and to everyone they ever knew. However, I do not think that it's this grand scheme by Major League Baseball to manipulate stats and at the end of the day, we are giving Major League Baseball far too much credit to go into this massive conspiracy. The balls are being made in Costa Rica. They don't have every engineer in the world down in Costa Rica manipulating these baseballs. Well, this ball will get us 1 degree less. And I think it's a quality control issue. I think it's a big quality control issue. I think it's an issue that Major League Baseball owns the company that makes the baseballs. Only major sport that actually does that. Should not be the case. I do think it's a massive problem. And if nothing else, it's a massive problem because it's a talking point. And Major League Baseball is usually fairly decent about not giving the Players Association the easiest talking points in the world. And this one right now is just right there on a tee for them, which is just, why would you allow this to take place? I do not know whether it's arrogance or just not aware, just lack of awareness. It's mind blowing to me that this is even taking place. However, I do not find it to be this massive conspiracy. I think it's a problem that needs to be addressed. I think they need to get the baseballs out of Major League Baseball's hands and get a private company. I'm normally not big on, hey, let's get the private sector in there. But in this case, for the love of God, get somebody in there that does not own by Major League Baseball, so we can have a quality control issues completely covered, because it needs to be the same baseball. I don't think I'm going crazy by saying that we all have to be using the exact same level playing surface. It goes back to the steroid era. Like, people talk about the steroid era and like, oh, well, Barry Bonds shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Why? Why shouldn't he be in the Hall of Fame? Why are we going to penalize him for what they all did? And let's stop pretending that they all didn't do it. And at the end of the day, this is not a popular thing to say, and I will say it, if you didn't do steroids back then, I think you're crazy. Because how else were you going to compete? You weren't. You were going to be without a job. Now, and I always talk about where's that line on the steroid issue? The steroid issue to me, the line is 2003. The moment it became banned in Major League Baseball and drug testing was implemented, you are off. No, you cannot do that at all. If you are caught, you are banned from everything that involves the Hall of Fame. Pre-2003, I'm going to let you off the hook, because if we're going to sit here and talk about keeping guys out of the Hall of Fame because of performance-enhancing drugs, then you might want to not look up and down the halls of the Hall of Fame anytime soon.
Yeah. Okay. So along those lines, though, too, just with the baseballs, one of the big issues that came up last year was checking pitchers. The term sticky stuff. What's your thought on that?
No, well, that was another nightmarish scandal. And you know what's horrible? But we just talked about the steroid era and how it's all somehow put on Barry Bonds. And last year, the sticky substances was all put on Garrett Cole. And I don't know why that is, for something that, again, everybody does. And let's stop pretending that they didn't know about this. This is very well known. It's not only well known, it's taught. It's taught at the highest levels. It is just part of the game. Does it manipulate the baseball? Yes, very much so. Spider tack is flat out cheating. But other things that they've started monitoring, I thought was a little ridiculous. The sunscreen and rosin thing is just not the same thing. Anyone that says sunscreen and rosin is the same thing is just trying to make some sort of talking point that doesn't exist. It's, and I really thought, who was the pitcher with the Tampa Bay Rays? I'm so sorry. Tyler Glasnow, who I've caught many times. A great guy, amazing hair. Tyler Glasnow, when he
fashion counts.
Oh yeah, it does. At the end of the day, this is why I kept playing for 11 years. This right here, baby. I had nothing to do with that. I can hit homers. No, but Tyler was absolutely right. You know, that taking away the sunscreen and rosin for a guy's fingertips changes finger pressure to a baseball. That finger pressure to a baseball goes into your forearm, goes into your UCL, and next thing you know, you're putting more pressure on your elbow, and now you have to go get Tommy John's surgery. Something all about a useless talking point. Do I think spider tack needs to be taken out of the game? Absolutely. Do I think that how they were handling it on the field was the right way to go? No, I really don't think a strip search on the field when a guy comes off the thing, it almost made players look like criminals immediately. And that's what really drove me insane. I'm like, I get why I get why the owners want this look on the field. But at the end of the day, is anyone falling for this? Anyone at all?
Yeah. When I noticed it live at games last year, it almost looked humiliating.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now let's get checked. And, you know, it was like a very grade school thing, it felt, but.
It felt like we were going into a CBA, and it seemed like a petty move to get one side to look bad by the other. And again, I'm not picking the players' side in this CBA just blindly. I think they have a lot of more great points, but the Players Association has a lot of problems too. And let's not pretend that they don't.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a question coming up, but it looks like Bruce sent in a question, and it relates to the Houston Astros. What's your thought on the Astros cheating scandal?
I actually think it's the worst cheating scandal in any sport, in any game in history. And here's why. There was a lot of distraction that was taking place during that scandal. And that's what really also bothered me. It's like it's very easy for people to take their eyes off the ball and what the scandal actually was. It was a sign stealing scandal. It wasn't a trash can scandal. It wasn't a sign relaying scandal. So whenever people talked about the buzzer on the chest, whether it was real or not, that doesn't matter. The buzzer on the chest is not the problem. Banging on the trash cans is not the scandal. If I pick a picture, by just looking at him, he gives me a tell, he tips his glove when he has a slider. We relay that to the hitter. We find every single thing we can to try to gain an advantage. Now, when I was hitting, I did not want them relaying that to me at all. It was not something that I could physically do at the plate. I needed to focus on the baseball itself and focus on what I was trying to accomplish. And also, when you're picking pitchers, you're often wrong, because have you ever met baseball players? We are the dumbest lot in the world. It's just when a guy's like, hey, Cody, I really got this guy figured out. And I look at him like, I know you. You don't have anything figured out. I am not going to listen to you one bit, because if you tell me slider and I get a fastball, I'm going to be blown away by 10 feet and I'm going to come in this dugout and kill you. So that's why I never wanted to know that. So again, the Astros sign stealing scandal was not that. It was not relaying the signs. If a guy's on second base and he's looking into the catcher's signs, that's not sign stealing either. That's gamesmanship. If he's throwing down a sign sequence and I'm able to see 5 pitches and absolutely decipher your sign sequence, you're a bad catcher. The end. However, if you use an Edgertronic camera in center field and point it into the catcher's signs and you put it through an algorithm and you figure out the sign immediately, doesn't matter how many signs I give you and you know what I put down because the algorithm figured it out, that's 100% right. Do you know what I can do at the plate if I know 100% right every pitch that's coming? I wouldn't be here right now. I still be in the big leagues.
Sure. Yeah. Do you think the punishments that were doled out were fair? It seemed like it hit team management and not players.
Have you ever seen the TV show The Shield?
I have not.
There's something that it's about a bad cop played by Michael Chiklis. And there's something that happened in the first episode. He kills another cop and gets away with it. And it wasn't until like the very last episode of the 7th season, he's getting immunity. And the first thing he confesses to is that. And the person that already granted him immunity just looks up like, what have I done? I granted you immunity. Wasn't expecting all of these crimes to be said. That's what it felt like with the Astros scandal, because when the Astros scandal came up, it was like, we're going to give all the players a free pass. They need to just tell us what happened. And then when they found out what happened, they went, oh my God, what the hell did we allow them to get away with? Do I think the punishments were harsh enough? No, not even remotely. When I say that, I actually, what punishment are you referring to? Not a single player was punished. The only people that were punished were coaching staff members and front office, who all deserved to be punished. But honestly, I didn't think they were punished harsh enough. AJ Hinch I like AJ Hinch quite a bit. I think he's an incredible manager. He got the suspension. The suspension took place over a 60-game season. I'm sorry, you missed 60 games. That is not a good enough suspension for me. Same with Alex Cora. Right now, Alex Cora is going to be a perennial, manager of the year, as he deserves, because he's very good. But his punishment was not harsh enough to me. The players not getting any punishment at all, not harsh enough to me. They knew exactly what they were doing. So it bothers me. Yes. Am I going to hold it against them for the rest of their lives? No. But it definitely does bother me, because I was playing against those guys. Sure. They may not have been using this when they were playing against me when they're in AAA, but they got to go to the big leagues and stay. I got to go to the big leagues and get 10 at bats and never get an opportunity again. So there is a fair amount of resentment towards that, based on my experience in the game. And I don't like guys getting legs up over me over something I simply don't have access to.
Well, one of my takeaways on that is the players, while not actually punished, they seem to have that stigma that remains. Astros, White Sox in the postseason, the Chicago fans stayed on them, cheater chants throughout the entire game. So they're going to take that everywhere they go. It doesn't necessarily impact their results, but that stigma at least is going to be there.
I know this sounds very cynical, because it is, but at the end of the day, if you pay me major league minimum for 4 years, I'll take the booing.
Yeah.
That's $550,000 a year. Boo me all you want. I do not care. I'm going to go buy 3 houses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just that. I mean, at the end of the day, money does help a lot of things, whether you're a pariah or not. And look at the Astros. They've not only do they accept it, them and their fans have practically leaned into it at this point. It's almost like they're proud of what they did. And you even saw Carlos Correa with certain, absolutely, in my opinion, the dumbest quotes in the world. No one believed in us. Oh, shut up. What are you talking about? No one believed in you, like you're somehow, like you're the good guy. We all turned on you. Also, Carlos Correa is arguably the best player currently living, other than Mike Trout and Ohtani, and he's going to make $350 million, and I'd give it to him if I had the money.
Yeah. Well, Paul submitted a question, and actually syncs up nicely with my next question. He said, gambling commercials are everywhere now, and gambling parlors are at ballparks. It seems a scandal is imminent in MLB and sports. What are your thoughts?
That's another thing that really needs to be handled right now with this CBA, because a couple of years ago, before COVID, we talked about that $12.2 billion revenue that Major League Baseball made, highest it's ever made. That's going to look like pocket change compared to what they're actually going to make now with this partnership with BetMGM and gambling being introduced in baseball. And it's not just baseball, it's all sports. Whether we like it or not, that's where it's going. And I do know a Pete Rose question is coming, and I will get to that. Don't worry. And I will explain to you why Pete Rose does not belong in the Hall of Fame. And this is not related to Pete Rose in any way, shape, or form. And I will explain. But why?
Whenever you're ready to answer that.
But will there be a scandal? Yeah, there's going to be at least one. It's going to happen. But you could say the same thing about just about anything. We're still getting performance enhancing drug scandals. We're still, biogenesis was only a decade ago. Right. It's not like guys aren't trying to find new ways to cheat the system or make money. It's what's going to take place. However, if the Players Association and the owners can somehow come to an agreement on how this revenue is divvied out, I think you're going to eliminate at least a couple of potential scandals. It's when the Players Association gets cut out of it all and the owners are just tripling their IPs. That's when the players are going to be like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. We're doing the actual work. You mentioned MLB networks playing classic games right now because there's nothing else to really play at the moment. At the end of the day, the players are the product on the field. whether they want to admit that or not. And just like the logo is as much a part of the product as those players themselves. At the end of the day, I think it was my favorite quote when it comes to these things is a good negotiation is when every party walks away dissatisfied. That's what's going to happen, and that's what needs to happen for this to actually move forward. Not both sides are not going to be thrilled after this is done, and I do think this is going to get done. But I do think gambling coming into sports, it's inevitable. It's the way it's going to be, and there's just too much money to be had to leave it lying on the table. And I think Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, NFL, they all see the exact same thing. That's why they're all immediately making these partnerships. And that leads me to Pete Rose. And why does Pete Rose not belong in the Hall of Fame? Because we're talking about sports books that are regulated, that are watched, that are handled, that are working alongside hand in hand with Major League Baseball and respective sports. Back in the 1980s, this was not the case when it came to sports gambling. When you go to sports gambling, you normally go through bookies, loan sharks, yada, 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 organized crime, which handled a lot of that back in the day. Pete Rose was making bets. And if people are saying Pete Rose made bets on his team, well, he bet on his team to win. Okay, I'm going to argue that that's actually worse. Betting on your team as a manager that your team is going to win is arguably one of the worst things you could possibly do. And here is why. You're affecting not only how you're going to manage a game, how you're going to handle your players, not to mention you have money and action riding on that game. You are inadvertently putting your players in harm's way without their knowledge. Not only them, but their families, their wives, their children. Say a guy with, hey, Pete Rose has got action on this game and he doesn't make the payment on the thing. All of a sudden, a player that gets 0-3 gets threatened by somebody. This is actually a very frightening potential, especially back then when there was a lot of organized crime involved. So to say that Pete Rose put his players and their families in actual dangerous and actionable positions is an understatement. If I found out a manager did that to me, I don't know what I would do.
And Paul followed up, most of the scandals in European soccer involve referees, so don't overlook the umpires and other officials on gambling scandals.
You know what? I think it's just one of those things that Major League Baseball just has to monitor it. And we've seen how well Major League Baseball can monitor things and can't monitor things. So it's going to, at the end of the day, when it comes to these things, there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be scandals. There's going to be messes that are going to need to be cleaned up. It's not going to run smoothly at all times. It's Major League Baseball. Do I need to say it's going to run smoothly at all times? It ain't. Right. But it's at the end of the day, I think things are going to work out quite well. And I do think it's actually going to help grow the game, believe it or not. I really do. I think it's a good thing because the game will only grow bigger and bigger from that point on. It's just a matter of making sure we safeguard the game itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are some of the ways that you think we can grow the game? Because that's always the discussion that circulates around, is that kids don't connect with the game anymore. Games are too long. It's the 3 true outcomes. It's a strikeout, it's a walk, it's a home run. There's got to be other ways, making players a little bit more front and center in terms of social media, embracing that. What do you think?
I think it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things you just mentioned. I think you talked about pace of play of the game. I think pace of play of the game is actually quite good. And I think it's this argument that's made a lot. And I don't see much merit, and no one's really been able to show me any numbers to prove that theory correct to me. The game getting younger. It seems to me, now I do need to do some digging into the actual metrics as well, but it seems as though the game is getting younger and it is getting slightly more accessible. However, access to the game is not accessible enough. The game to play the game is not cheap enough or accessible enough. There aren't enough baseball fields throughout the country to get this done as well. At the end of the day, I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds, the MLB packages and sports packages are a big problem. The fact that I can't watch every Major League Baseball game every night is crazy to me. That's nonsense that even when I'm in a city, like I spend a lot of time in El Paso, Texas, because I have a baseball and softball nonprofit over there called the El Paso Border Youth Athletic Association. Please, 501c3 nonprofit, borderyouth.org, trying to get kids into college through baseball and softball.
Absolutely.
But the thing about it that's so tricky, the accessibility, it's not quite where it needs to be. There's not enough games to be seen. And every time I'm in El Paso, guess what 2 teams I cannot watch? the Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers, the only two teams in Texas. And I can't watch them in El Paso, Texas on my MLB package. That's a problem. Blackouts are a problem. That should not be the case. You should be making the game as accessible as you possibly can, period. Because playing the game is not as accessible as it can be. So watching the game needs to be.
Yeah, we have one of our chapter members. He grew up in Iowa, and he had mentioned
he's never seen the Cubs play ever.
Cubs, Sox, Twins, Royals, Cardinals.
The teams don't even exist in Iowa, but he got to watch one game in the cornfield, so it's fine.
And he had a minor league team, but
true. He's got Des Moines. And by the way, Des Moines
went out everywhere, and he just never got to see him after that.
Well, if he's over there, I'm assuming he's in Des Moines. And I got to say, of the AAA cities, Des Moines, sneaky city, Iowa Cubs, great place, great city, great food.
Okay. Well, actually, that's a perfect time to segue back to one of the questions we were talking about your background a little bit more. Somebody had asked earlier, just tell us a little bit more about your minor league experience.
Well, I played for 11 years. I spent most of that time in AAA. I think I played for 8 organizations, bounced. It's funny. I spent every spring training in Arizona. Don't know how I pulled it off, but I do think that's an accomplishment. And I only played it in the PCL. I never played in the International League. Of my minor league cities, I think it's very similar and different to anybody else. I struggled as much as anybody else did. I had a season where I had to live in my car. That was when I was playing my first time in AAA, Tucson, Arizona, for the Tucson Padres, for the San Diego Padre organization. It was 2012. And, there are struggles, financial struggles when you're playing in the minor leagues, especially if you've never had a major league call up. So I had to live in my car one season. There was another season where I got to live in a wonderful city like El Paso, Texas, or Reno, Nevada. And I've had other seasons where, hey, pop into Binghamton, New York for 1 month. Hey, you got to spend 2 days in Jackson, Tennessee. And if you don't know anything about Jackson, Tennessee, it's not so much a town as it is a truck stop, maybe. So I've gotten to see some very cool things. I got to have incredible experiences, play with great teammates, learn from great and horrific coaches, played for great organizations and terrible ones. It's just, I think I got the full scope. I basically got the entire scope of Major League Baseball and everything it has to offer. So I would say I have one of the more unique perspectives because I've seen every aspect of this game. Mm-hmm. And fortunately and unfortunately, I've lived every aspect of this game.
Sure. Totally understand. So this is obviously SABR's Chicago chapter, and we're fortunate to have 2 major league teams and 2 major league teams that seem to be going in different directions or 2 different approaches. 2016, I was very fortunate to get a wonderful mug or a cup like this that has a World Series championship that I never thought would happen in my lifetime.
Might I ask, where were you when that final out was made?
Winning it on my couch, and I was quite sure if I was going to be screaming with joy or total shock. The answer was shock. My wife came downstairs and she's like, "Why aren't you saying anything?" I'm like, "I'm frozen."
I was in Venezuela in a hotel in Caracas watching it on a 1992 Tube Zenith TV that might have been a 12 full inches. And I was locked into my hotel room waiting to be escorted to my plane flight the next day to fly home. And I was just like, man, couldn't have gotten, because I remember the game got rain. There was a rain delay in the extra innings. And I was thinking, please rain, pour down horrifically hard so this could be postponed to tomorrow night so I could watch this on the comfort of my own couch in Los Angeles.
Yeah, because when the Cubs actually took the lead, the one moment that I actually jumped out and started yelling was, "That wasn't enough runs. That wasn't enough runs. They're still going to lose." Somehow they managed to hang on. But it's hard to believe that was 5 years ago and that team is dismantled. And it seems like a lot of the significant players from that particular team did actually end up in this year's postseason, of course, in different uniforms, with Bryant winding up in San Francisco. Schwarber was on the Red Sox at that point. Javi Baez was really the only one who just kind of wound up in limbo with the Mets. They made the choice to break it all down. Is that do you think that's the right decision? Do you think they had enough?
I got some bad news. It was definitely the right decision, because at the end of the day, they weren't going to sign pretty much any of these guys back. There's a possibility of maybe bringing one or two back. You never know. Baez could actually take place. Chris Bryant could take place. Rizzo could take place. But at the end of the day, especially the year before, I was really disappointed in the Cubs in the Darvish trade. And the reason why I was disappointed was not so much getting rid of Darvish. I wanted him to stay, in Chicago, because I truly felt the Cubs had more than enough to still compete. As you saw the first half of the season, they absolutely could still compete, because that division at the time was fairly anemic. I mean, just look at what the Cardinals did. The Cardinals, that second half went off, and I know everybody in Wrigleyville is sitting going like, well, what if the Cubs didn't do this? Hey, that was one of those unique, crazy months that the Cardinals had. So, and you could say the same thing about the Braves. Look what the Braves did. Yes, but the Braves are still going to be good next year too. They still have their core players. The Cubs were not going to have that. And that Darvish trade, the reason I bring it up is because they did not get much for him, especially after the San Diego Padres trade for Snell. The Padres gave the Tampa Bay Rays pretty much the World Series team, the 2026 World Series team. Like, they gave up a lot to get Blake Snell. To get Darvish, they gave up a couple of decent players, but it wasn't top prospects, and it sure as hell wasn't the guys that were going to be your core for the next 5 years to come. So I was very disappointed in that trade. So they kind of needed the fire sale, and I was blown away by it, because you always hear about the fire sale that's going to take place. Every team, every losing team. I was with the Padres for 7 years. Trust me, every July, Cody, you ready for the fire sale? That never came.
Right.
But the Cubs legitimately did it. They moved everybody out, and quite frankly, their minor league system was gutted. They needed to bolster their system. And, of the players they got back, you're probably going to get probably 1, 2, maybe 3 to 4 at most big league players that are going to possibly stay. You might get another couple, too, that'll be a cup of coffee or trade pieces for later. They needed to do it. But you mentioned the teams going in the two different directions. Now, they sold off their team. I still look at the Cubs roster saying this team could feasibly still compete. And the fact that they went and got Marcus Stroman, to me, says they're planning on spending more money. So that's why I mentioned, I'm not ruling out Chris Bryant coming back. I'm not ruling out Javi Baez coming back. I'm not ruling out Carlos Correa coming in. I really am not. Now, is that a pipe dream? Possibly. Yes. It sounds he's going to be costing a lot of money. But say the Cubs go and get Carlos Correa, the Cubs are in playoff contention from this point forward for the next 5 to 6 years.
Baez is gone though. He signed with Detroit.
Oh no, I'm sorry, not Baez, but Baez signed with Detroit. But Bryant is still a legitimate possibility. Sorry, You're right. Baez signed with Detroit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting though, because I feel like with Bryant, I never got the sense that he was unhappy here. I feel like a lot of that narrative was built around him because of the delayed call up, just kind of needling him with that in the All-Star game, asking him if he's going to be traded or not. I think he seemed to be really kind of the good soldier in the whole thing and did it. But at the same time too, I could see him just move on and just say, hey, I did it. It's going to be tough to go back and kind of relive that magic of being a part of that team that finally did it.
It's a tricky thing, but also, believe it or not, I'm a big fan. It might just be me personally. I'm a big fan of players reuniting with teams, all the time. Like, I was kind of hoping, part of me was hoping Verlander was going to sign with Detroit, because I just thought that'd be a nice reunion. I'm a big fan of seeing players go back to where it all began type thing. And that might just be my nostalgia chords kicking in, because when I was a kid, when Eddie Murray came back to the Dodgers, I was just like, oh my God, Eddie Murray's back.
Bernie Jenkins coming back to the Cubs.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, there's something about it that I really kind of dig. It might be a pipe dream, but it could feasibly happen. I'm not ruling it out, and I don't think he's ruling it out either. I think the thing that really gets in a lot of Cubs fans' head is that he turned down that $200 million extension. So does he actually have interest in coming back? Because that's most likely going to be his market right around that area. So who knows? He might jump all over it, but if you get him, then you might as well throw Correa out of the window. And do you want to move forward in a different direction, or do you want to kind of stand pat and bring somebody back?
Sure. Yeah. And the marketing guy in me too was be like, hey, you get to sell the whole homecoming, Chris is back and all of that. So, but we'll see. So on that note, the White Sox probably fell short of their postseason expectations. I'm not 100% sure that people really thought they were going to win the World Series, but I don't necessarily think they were going to drop out early. What's your thought on them moving forward?
I mean, they
I
ran
know we
into
have a
that
bunch of
buzzsaw.
Sox fans sitting here.
Yeah, they ran into the buzzsaw. That was the Houston Astros. At the end of the day, the Astros were pretty damn good. I mean, you just got to admit that. It doesn't mean the White Sox aren't. I think the White Sox are a team that is going to be around for the foreseeable future. I think there are other teams in that division are going to start competing. The Detroit Tigers are ready to compete. Last year, they had one of the biggest steps forward of any team in Major League Baseball. You know, they finished third in their division. They finished nearly 500 from a team that the year before, and I understand that it's a 60-game season, but they had a winning percentage of like 295 to getting to 500 the next season without making these moves. Casey Mize kind of coming into his own. Now they go out and get another arm. Now they got their hands on Javi Baez. This team is starting to look like they could feasibly begin to compete, legitimately compete, but they go out and get another arm, maybe another bat. I'd watch out a little bit if I were the White Sox, because it's clear the Guardians are going in the other direction. By the way, that's the first time I've actually said Guardians out loud.
Yeah.
Feels so
we
good about
have it
that.
here.
I feel so good about that I nailed that. But yeah, you see the Guardians kind of go in the opposite direction. I feel like the Royals are getting ready to start moving a little bit, but last year they were giving me the feeling of the 2013 Royals, like, oh man, they feel like they're about to move to the next step, and then they just kind of stood pat last season, and it kind of disappointed me a little bit. But I do think the White Sox should be dominating that division going forward. The Twins, I don't know what we're going to get out of the Twins going forward. They don't have Barrios anymore. Obviously, they extended Buxton, which is exciting, but Buxton has never been healthy, so I don't really know what to make of it at this exact moment. The White Sox should not only compete, they should be going to the White Sox. They should be going to the World Series as soon as next year. They got their hands on Graveman, which is a great pickup for them. I think they can also make another move, maybe for a second baseman, if they move Kimbrel, like they said they're going to, most likely. And a thing about Kimbrel, you know, Kimbrel is arguably the best closer in baseball. And you take that closer and you take him out of the closer role, and he struggled a little bit. And I think that kind of plays into that whole thing that I talked about Jock Peterson earlier. You know, taking a guy out of the role that not only is he good at and is excelled at, and putting him in a different role, it takes some period of adjustment sometimes. And Craig Kimbrel becoming a setup man out of nowhere, I think may have affected, maybe not mentally. He was probably the exact same guy, the same preparation, same toughness, but just that slight change could have absolutely changed everything in his game. So it's just, I think he's going to be in a much better spot in a different organization when they do trade him. And I think the White Sox can get something for him, because at the end of the day, everybody knows what Craig Kimbrel's bringing to the table.
Yeah. And my wife sent me a message. She's like, I know it's not the Milwaukee chapter, but she's a Brewers fan.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. do they have any shot of being legitimate next year or not?
Yes, absolutely. Listen, the National League Central right now to me is the biggest question mark in baseball, because the Cardinals on paper should dominate, but they didn't until the last month of the season. The Cubs on paper really right now are not terrible. They really aren't. Quite frankly, see the shirt that I'm wearing, the 4A team, I was more excited about the Cubs that last month because I was loving watching Pete Schwindel, and I was loving watching Rudolph. I was loving watching him too. My God, I'm loving it. It just goes to show you, at the end of the day, if you can play in Double-A, you can be in the big leagues for 20 years. It's not a matter of if you're good enough. It's a matter of opportunity. And these are two guys in their 30s who have never had opportunity, and you give it to them and see what you get out of them. Wisdom, what did Wisdom do? Hit 30 home runs. Pete Schwindel, same thing. I was really digging that team. And you never know. You give them a shot next year, they might do some magic for you.
Interesting.
The Cubs' bigger problem is not offensive anyways. It's on the mound. All their starting pitchers throw exactly the same. I always hated the phrase pitch to contact, but at the end of the day, it seems like the Cubs have a lot of guys who throw in the low 90s that get a lot of ground balls. So don't be afraid to maybe go get a flamethrower starter that can pitch up in the zone and get guys to miss.
Sure.
I love Kyle Hendricks, but you don't need 3 Kyle Hendricks. You need Kyle Hendricks.
Right. Yeah. You need him to be solid. Tim, it looks like you have your hand raised. Question.
Yeah, Cody, as somebody who played the game, did you really see that much of a difference between Rick Renteria and Tony La Russa managing the White Sox?
No, but the big thing there were a couple of hiccups early in the season with Tony La Russa. at the end of the day, Tony La Russa knows very much what he's doing. I think he got a lot of flack early in the season that was a little unnecessary, and some of it even came from me because I was critical of him. The couple of the moves that he made early in the season, quite frankly, not knowing the new rules was a bit of a problem. But the actual on-field generalship of the manager, no, not much of a difference. Maybe a couple of tweaks in here, how a starter was handled or a bullpen was handled. The majority, listen, how do I put this? I think a lot of people, I'm going to use Dave Roberts as an example. Dave Roberts, if you go on Twitter, there are more people asking for Dave Roberts' head nonstop. It seems like no fan in Los Angeles likes him. He's one of the nicest men I've ever met in my life. He is one of the smartest people I've ever met in baseball and absolutely knows how to communicate with his players, what he wants to do, has a collaborative effort with his front office. He's a very good manager and very good at what he does. And I think a lot of people don't understand that managing a game is more of a collaborative effort than, yeah, you're the one that's making the final decision on the field, but it is a collaborative effort and you know what you're going into. You're not just going rogue mid-game and be like, hey, we had a plan to bring this guy in. Nope. Bring in Hendricks in the 7th. I'm a cowboy. That's just not what takes place. What we don't see, however, of what La Russa brings to the table or Renteria brings to the table is what they do behind the scenes, how they handle their players, how they handle the egos, how they handle the guy that's struggling. Think of Yermin Mercedes, for an example. That how he kind of went the exact opposite way after that thing with Tony La Russa happened. Now, if Tony La Russa said the exact opposite, would Mercedes have had that downfall? Would it have been the controversy that it became? Probably not. At the end of the day, no matter what your player does, it's pretty good to have a manager that's got your back no matter what, even if you're wrong. You know, I've had a manager defend one of my players on the field, take him into the locker room, and they had a fist fight because my manager had to go to bat knowing full well that he was wrong for his guy. And that's one of those things that you got to that just needs to happen. You know, it's the things off the field that we don't see that I think have a greater impact than we even truly imagine as fans, as everything. Because being a manager is a lot more than the X's and O's on the field, because the game more or less manages itself. All you need to handle is the bullpen and an occasional hit and run and bunt. And if you watch games these days, no one's hitting, running, no one's bunting. So you really just got to handle your bullpen.
Sure. Yeah. I just wonder, there's a school of thought out there that La Russa took this year to kind of let these guys, he said, okay, you know, if you guys kind of did your thing and you're, you know, these flamboyant players, you do your thing. Let's see how it goes. It didn't go so well. So now he's going to come into spring training, God, hoping there is a spring training, right? But he's going to come in, all of a sudden he's going to be the Tony La Russa that was in St. Louis or Oakland, or, you know, he's going to say, okay, we did it your way. It didn't work. Now we're going to do it my way. What do you think of that?
I think there might be an ounce of truth to that. Not a week ago, I hosted a show on 670 The Score. I got to have 4 hours, and I had Lucas Giolito on the show. And I've known Lucas since he was a little kid. We've known each other forever. And Lucas is, by the way, one of the smarter, kindest, and genuine human beings you'll ever meet, by the way. If you ever have the luxury, please hug the guy. He's amazing. But Lucas said something very interesting, and it kind of, I wouldn't say it echoes this, but I said, what's the thing you guys think you need to do to improve for next season? What's the thing? And he just said, I think we just need to handle our preparation a little better as a group. And he was very clear that was not for one person. That was not for Tony. That was not for this. That was for everybody, himself included. He said the only thing I feel we walked into with Houston was they were just a little more prepared than we were. And that's something we're going to handle next year. We are not going to be ill-prepared, period. And that can be on Tony La Russa's head, partially on Tony La Russa as well as the manager. You, at the end of the day, are the one in the press conference after that loss. So is he going to crack the whip a little bit more? Maybe. Can he truly control these kids the way Tony La Russa used to? No, don't even bother.
Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, and please do, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself, ask, or continue going into the chat.
I'm an open book, guys. You can ask me just about anything. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, I guess you mentioned Giolito. Any story you'd like to share, maybe?
what can I say that won't embarrass him? Because it's so easy to get after him about his dad, because his dad is such a gem. I love him. His dad is the most complimentary, lovely guy in the world. But he digs him some of Lucas. He's so proud of his son. So I'll never forget his speech at Lucas's wedding. Even Lucas put his head down. He's like, "Oh God, Dad, not now." Because he said he's like, "Yeah, my son at 18, he was just this flamethrower out of Harvard Westlake," and Lucas is like, "Oh God." Because Lucas is an extremely humble guy, so he gets embarrassed by those things. I love that. No, I think my favorite Lucas Giolito story isn't about Lucas. It's actually about Lucas Giolito's mother, Lindsay Frost. In case you don't know anything about Lindsay Frost, actress, artist. Her brother is a man named Mark Frost, co-creator of Twin Peaks. So that is an extremely creative family. I cannot stress that enough. Lucas's brother goes to school. He's an actor in London. It's a very, very, very creative family. But Lucas's mom got, I think, her acting start in the coolest way possible. She was on a soap opera, and she was playing a character that had already been on the soap opera for, I think, 3 seasons, played by Meg Ryan. Meg Ryan was leaving. She was going to go into the movies, so they didn't want to kill off the character, so she got into a car accident, and they did the wrapping of the face thing, and she had facial corrective surgery. They unwrap her, and it's Lucas's mom. Same character. So Lucas's mom, in a way, is Meg Ryan.
Wow, that's creative. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, Lucas Giolito, one of the greatest guys in the world. I can't stress that enough. Everyone here who's in Chicago, if you're a Cubs fan, root for Lucas. You won't regret it. He's the greatest guy in baseball.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about moving forward. I know we're at the hour mark, so if there's a time you need to leave, by all means. Oh, Richard, do you have a?
Yeah, just Cody, I mean, you sort of referred to this, but you really didn't go into it. What are your thoughts about the CBA and the players? Like, what are your opinions about all of that? Like, what would you change, or what do you think should happen with it?
I think at the end of the day, the biggest problem the players have is things along the lines of roster manipulation, certain rule changes that have come into play that seemingly are put in for pace of play, but at the end of the day, don't really do anything for pace of play, such as a relief pitcher coming in to face 3 batters. On paper, oh, that's a pace of play thing. No, it's not. In no way, shape, or form does that affect pace of play. However, it does affect relief pitcher's service time. And it sure as hell affects a left-handed pitcher's service time, because now the left-on-left matchup no longer is a thing. Thus, you just killed an entire career that doesn't exist anymore. There are no left-on-left pitchers anymore, unless the rule gets changed. So I think the Players Association sees a lot of these rule changes as potential for roster manipulation, something that they were very scared of last CBA. And I remember laughing to myself going, oh, yeah, we lost this battle already. Like, we're going into this. I honestly put my head down and said, poor Tony Clark. Poor Tony does not know how technology works. Because his biggest fear at the time, I think it was about 2016, the Players Association's biggest fear was wearable tech. They were terrified of it. This is the worst thing in the world to the Players Association. This is a Whoop band, by the way. I like all the technology that's currently existing in the world. I like knowing every metric of what I am as an athlete or a person. The Players Association was terrified of this for a very obvious reason. These numbers can be used against you in arbitration. You've heard certain phrases said in the lexicon of baseball lately, and they get said a lot more. And I always love it when these phrases get introduced, because like, I know what that's for. And I remember when Anthony Rendon was in the World Series, they kept referring to him as like, yeah, low heart rate guy. I said, that's not a phrase. That's not a real phrase. No one in the history of Earth has ever been referred to as a low heart rate guy. There's a reason that phrase is now all of a sudden being introduced. They want to know their heart rate so they can use it against them in arbitration. The end. They want to know. I'll give you an example of that. I was with the Diamondbacks. I was told flat out, there's almost nothing you can do. This is 2019 to get to the big leagues this season. If we're losing and we have the choice between calling you up because you're leading all of professional baseball in home runs, or a 22-year-old prospect, we're calling up the 22-year-old prospect. I appreciated that honesty a lot, to which I said, that's fine. I'll be your Crash Davis. I'll take care of your prospects. I need a favor from you. Just promise me, if you can, sell me to Japan or Korea. And they agreed to that. And I had a wonderful experience with them. But I remember spring training of 2019, they told me I was going to do a lot of pinch hitting. They told me they had a prospect that was going to be in AAA. I was not going to play every day. Bit of a gut punch, knowing full well that I hit 10 home runs one home run every 10 at bats. And I've had a very good career. But you know what? I appreciated the honesty again. So I'm like, okay, listen, I'm going into this season as a pinch hitter. I went up to the front office man. I said, I'm not going to say who it was, but I went up to him and I said, I would love to see my advanced stats. He said, oh, we have a policy. You can't see them. I said, okay, I'm doing a new role this year and I need to know something. I would really like to see my advanced stats. He said, it's a policy, Deck. You can't do it. Okay. You know, it's me, right? Can I see my advanced stats? He's like, well, Cody, the reason we don't let the guys see it is because, you know, guys can, he was basically saying baseball players are stupid and guys can misinterpret stats. And I just looked at him again. I'm like, you guys know me, correct? He said, yes. Do you honestly think I will misinterpret any stat or number? And he said, no. It's okay. Guys, see my stats. We cannot do it, Cody. It's policy. Finally, I just yelled at him. I just said, oh my God, am I hitting arbitration with you? And he just said, what? I'm 32 years old. I have 1 month in the major leagues. So for me to hit arbitration, I have to get to the big leagues this season and then play 3 more full seasons with the Arizona Diamondbacks, which means I will be 36 years old when I hit arbitration. Answer me this question. Am I hitting arbitration with you in those years? And he just started and he said, no. I said, okay, can I see my stats now? And he laughed and he said, yes. I got to see my stats and I got to learn something that I needed to learn. Those stats that they were going that they're scared on wearable tech. And to get back to the original point, the wearable tech was something they were very worried about. Wearable tech is almost passé. They have everything they could ever want. They have the tracking systems based on radar. They want my heart rate. They have it. They want to know how exactly to the degree that my barrel gets through the baseball. They have it. They have a number for me that says what kind of athlete I am. All of these things are going to be used against me in arbitration. So the wearable tech that the Major League Baseball Players Association was terrified of was already passé. It was over. They lost that battle walking in. And that's why it was funny to me, because I'm like, there are actual issues that we can fight, but we're going to choose this one that we already lost. And that bothered the living hell out of me. And I even went up to Tony after that meeting because we spent more time talking about player comforts at the big league level. Hey, we're going to make sure a chef is in every clubhouse. The food here is fine. That's not a big deal. Hey, you guys I was with the Royals at the time. You guys just won the World Series. There's a lot of things out there that they're making you guys sign for, Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas. You guys don't have to go out there and sign that many things without being compensated. I'm like, oh my God, I do not care about Eric Hosmer or Mike Moustakas signing autographs. Like, that's not a problem. So I came up to Tony afterwards and I said, Tony, none of that mattered. None of it. Literally none of it. I just got to the big leagues. I am signed on a minor league deal right now. I am currently protected by the Players Association up until opening day. If I don't make this roster, I go to AAA. I'm no longer in the Players Association. I paid those dues literally and figuratively. I grinded for 7 years. I got here and I'm in the Players Association, yet I'm not protected. When are you going to protect a guy like me? And I'll never forget Tony Clark's answer. It's the most insulting thing that's ever been said to me in my life. And he just looked at me and he said, and I'll never forget my response too. He said, well, Deck, you got to remember, you're a guy that was never supposed to make it. And when he said that to me, it just once again reiterated that this Players Association has got serious issues, because this Players Association was created to protect literally me, not the guy making $100 million, the guy who was about to get screwed out of his job. That's what it was for. He doesn't care. And his answer was, you were never supposed to make it. I wasn't supposed to be there to begin with. Okay. I did respond to him. That was an answer to a question. Sure as hell not the one I just asked you. And he just said, I need your help. And there's a whole locker room over there on the other side of this complex filled with 200 guys who desperately need your help. And he just looked at me and said, it's not on the cards for us right now, Deck. That was the end of that conversation. Haven't spoken to Tony Clark since. And I think he's the wrong man to handle that Players Association, period.
Powerful. So how does this lockout end? Are we missing, Tim had hinted at spring training. Are we going to miss that? Are we going to miss regular games?
I truly don't think so. I really don't. I think in my honest opinion, I think this next 3 months going to all the way to the end of February are going to be arguably the ugliest, mudslingiest months ever. Both sides it's going to be a lot of leaks. Sources are going to disappear, and it's going to be a lot of leaks. And the leaks are going to be from the Players Association. The leaks are going to be from the MLB. Hey, the Players Association walked away from this deal. And then everybody's going to be on Twitter saying, oh, these greedy players. And then it's going to be like, no, the owners offered this. That's ridiculous. And everyone's going to be like, oh, these greedy owners. And it's going to be basically that for 3 months until spring training is going to come up. And then they're all going to sit down week 1 of spring training and hammer out a deal. And no one's going to be happy on either side, but we're going to get some baseball. And at the end of the day, that's truly what matters.
We're all looking forward to that. It was funny because right after the lockout and everybody was talking about how all current player information was stripped off of team websites, off the app, I had to jump on Cubs.com, and there it was, Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game again. Ernie Banks' 500th home run again.
What's funny about it to me is just weird, petty behavior. There's just no reason. You're doing it to do it. Stop it. Like, why you're actively trying to make things worse, whether you're trying to provoke them to do something or say something. At this point, I don't care. It's all manipulation on every single side. And it's very fun. I feel like everybody should go to film school. I feel like film school is one of the best ways to see how easily the masses are manipulated, because that's what filmmaking is. Filmmaking is, to its very degree, manipulation. You use camera angles, lighting, storytelling tropes, music, everything to manipulate your audience to elicit an emotion. So anytime one of these things are said, it's all to elicit some sort of emotion. And it's just manipulation. And it drives me nuts because I feel like my intelligence is constantly being insulted. Just hammer out a deal. At the end of the day, that's what you're going to do. I mentioned that I had this Doctor Who mug right here.
Right.
I'm a massive Doctor Who fan, but there's a line that he says about war that always stood out to me, and I loved it. He's talking about a scale model for war, and he looks and he just says, what you're looking at is a scale model for war, and you don't know what's going to happen while the war is taking place. And it always ends the exact same way that it always needs to end. 2 people sitting down and talking. At the end of the day, that's what it's going to be. So sit down and talk now before all the lives are lost. Extreme example for this, but at the end of the day, they're just going to be throwing shots at each other until they finally sit down and hammer out a deal, which is what they should have done at the first place. And it's just going to be annoying. Enjoy the annoyance with me.
Yeah. Well, we'll get you back when it all clears up and we're playing baseball. So, there's a question in the chat to kind of go back a little bit. We were talking about La Russa and against the Sox and Astros in the postseason. La Russa was matched up against Dusty Baker, another old school guy. What are your thoughts on Dusty Baker?
The coolest man in the history of Major League Baseball. I would have given anything to play for him. I've had the luxury of only meeting him a couple of times. He's Reggie Smith's best friend. That's how I got to meet him. Yeah. There's something about Dusty Baker's demeanor on a field that, as a fan watching, is just a different level. It's almost like Dusty Baker, whether it's true or not, Dusty Baker always carries himself as if he knows something that you don't. But he's cool about it, and he's not going to tell you, but he knows. So he's just going to chomp away. He's just going to chomp away at that toothpick because he's the coolest man alive. I couldn't be a bigger Dusty Baker fan if I tried. I would give anything to play for him.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I only have one more formal question, and then I'd like to open it up to everybody, or Cody, if you want to run with it for a little bit. Anything maybe we haven't talked about, but you talked a little bit about film school. Mm-hmm. Baseball movies. What are some of your favorite and least favorite?
Favorite? I can't wait to go over least favorite.
I think I know where to go with that.
All right, favorite right out the gate. It's an ever-changing list. I'm going to put number 1 at the top because it's going to stay there, period. The Natural, I think, is, in my opinion, the worst book ever written, the greatest baseball movie ever made. And I made the mistake of seeing the movie, growing up in the movie and the magic of the movie, and then reading the book, which shattered my soul into every piece possible. I honestly,
that's how I did it too.
Yeah, I think I was mad at the world for 6 months after reading that book. But that movie is Barry Levinson. What a director. The things that they were able to do in that movie, lighting wise, are so good. They shot almost that entire movie at magic hour. I don't know how they pulled that off. In case you don't know what magic hour is, it's that very short amount of time when the sun's going down that it lights up the sky in oranges and bright yellows. You only have roughly 10 minutes of magic hour to shoot. That's why this movie is amazing to me. That so much of it is shot in magic hour. This movie must have taken 3 years to make. Every performance, Glenn Close got her first Oscar nomination out of that. It's just the story itself is a very relatable story. I feel as though it's shot incredibly well. It's told incredibly well, well acted. And here's the funny thing. When I say well acted, I'm bringing up Robert Redford, who is a good actor. But if you notice Robert Redford's full career, he never allows him to seem vulnerable in any movie. He's always the tough guy next to Paul Newman. He's never this vulnerable guy. And in that movie, it was the first movie I ever saw him in where he played a vulnerable character. And I just love everything about that movie, all the way down to the line. I want to walk down the street and be Roy Hobbs, the greatest that ever played this game. I used to say that as a little kid. I wanted to be Roy Hobbs. I wore 9 as a little kid because of it. And then I turned it around and I wore 6 the rest of my life because I met Steve Garvey and I'm going to wear 6 from this. And it's a 9 upside down. So I'm going to do it. So I wore 6
I was going to
forever.
say Jason appreciates that.
Yeah, I was a massive Steve Garvey fan. I met him at a baseball camp once. I think Reggie's camp. And very nice guy to me. And of course, growing up in LA, I grew up a Dodger fan. I'm not a fan of anybody now. Just so you guys are all clear, I brought up the Dodgers a few times because I'm in LA and I'm from LA. It's not because I'm a Dodger fan. Trust me. Once I got drafted, my views on fandom and the game itself very much changed. At that point, I played for the Padres for 7 years. I wanted to destroy the Dodgers. All I wanted to do was beat the Dodgers. So I just bring them up because they're proximity. But yeah, the natural to me will always be number 1. Bull Durham is a very close number 2, obviously. Number 3 is a movie that I feel like no one brings up enough ever, and it drives me nuts, and it is Mr. Baseball. Man, oh man, oh man. Thomas Magnum as Jack Elliott. How can you not love some of that? He is so good. He's got the best swing of any actor in the history of cinema. Dennis Haysbert is in it, the All-State guy who went on to play Pedro Serrano, which tells me he played baseball somewhere because he's been in 4 baseball movies as 2 different characters. That movie is so good. Go watch it now. It is hilarious. It also introduced the world to a young Frank Thomas. It's just Mr. Baseball is so good. Obviously, Major League and A League of Their Own to me is going to round out my top 5. Those 3 are always kind of interchangeable. I think A League of Their Own is incredible. And it's not just because of the story itself, also because I think I played for Tom Hanks 4 times. I played for exactly that guy 4 times. Not the same guy. I played for 4 different ones 4 times. Guys would just show up arguably hammered and then leave arguably hammered, allegedly.
Fill out the lineup card and go, right?
I mean, they were there physically. I love that movie. Now you want to go into worst.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, Field of Dreams is an unwatchable movie. It's terrible. At the end of the day, you guys ought to stop lying to yourselves. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible movie. Kevin Costner's character belongs in prison for kidnapping, not to mention the person he kidnapped disappeared into some corn. So honestly, in a real life scenario, we're looking at a missing persons, not only a kidnapping, but a potential murder. He's going to prison. Just so you know, the car is coming into the cornfield at the end and it's magical. Great. He's going to prison. Good luck explaining all this in a court of law. Also, he could play catch with his dad. Have you ever played catch with your dad? It sucks. God, that movie's horrible. Horrible. God, it makes no sense. None of it. Nothing makes sense. And then it ends. Great. We got one good speech from James Earl Jones. It is a very good speech. I will freely admit that. I freely admit the James Earl Jones speech is a highlight, but you made me sit through 2 hours of nonsense and then an extra 10 minutes afterwards just to get that 2-minute speech. I can watch that 2-minute speech on YouTube right now and leave out the rest and think the movie's brilliant. Outside of that, you put it all together. It's a mess. You've all been lying to yourselves. It's a terrible movie.
All right. Well, that was my last formal question. So, Cody, anything you'd like to share that maybe we haven't addressed?
No. I mentioned earlier things that I'm very passionate about. I'm very passionate about my 501c3 nonprofit, the El Paso Border Youth Athletic Association. We talked.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you say that again? Maybe
Yeah.
put that in the chat too.
So
people
you
get
follow
that.
us on Twitter at EP for El Paso, EPBYAA. It's the El Paso Border Youth Athletic Association. 501c3 nonprofit, all dedicated to getting kids into college through baseball and softball. I've had some great luck this year. I've gotten a few D1 guys to a few D1s, NAIAs, D2s. I've gotten 3 guys signed in the last year. It's been amazing. It's been a truly rewarding experience. Very difficult at times, but I've personally been training players. I've been getting guys, kind of up to speed on where the game is. Getting guys in the weight room is been an incredibly difficult thing, because it's amazing how many young baseball players don't seem to understand you need to be jacked to play baseball. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, I always tell them, hey, who's the smallest guy in Major League Baseball? And they always look at me like, well, Jose Altuve. I'm like, yeah, Jose Altuve is like 185. He might be 5'5", but he is 185 pounds and jacked. You better hit the weight room. You guys got to be athletes first before you can be baseball players. Trust me. Looking back, the size, I was always a big guy, big, strong guy, built more like a bruiser when I played. Honestly, I'm in better shape now than I was then. I'm still about 220, but like I've changed kind of my athleticism since I retired. I would be a better ball player probably now looks wise than I was then, even though it was extremely functional for me. But I looked terrible in a uniform. I was never fat, but I looked fat in every uniform I think I ever wore. So it's one of those things. And it's, I want to give kids as much information as they can, because especially the college recruiting side, and this is something we didn't get into. When I was going through that whole college recruitment, to this day, it's the worst experience I've ever had in baseball. Not me sleeping in my car in Tucson, not me, having no money, not me grinding through cities and bouncing around. The worst experience of my entire baseball life is unquestionably the college recruiting scenario. It was just a nightmare. Every college coach, being shady towards you, outright lying to you. You're a 16 to 17-year-old kid. And I had, I don't care, I'll say it, U of A try to keep me from going to UCLA. And how they did it was they basically said, we're bringing you in. And we kind of verbally agreed on this. And then they stalled me for a month and said, oh, we couldn't get you into school. Come to find out, none of that was real. It was just all a lie to keep me from signing at UCLA. To see, it was the shit. You're honestly, U of A tried to decimate a 17-year-old kid's future, and that makes me sick to this day. And the fact that that guy's still in college baseball makes me sick. So it's I think that the college thing is a really ugly scenario. So I try to make sure all these kids have the information they need to understand exactly what they're walking into. Because you have a meeting with a college coach, they are going to promise you the world. Whether it's real or not, it usually isn't. So it's an ugly thing. So I think it's very important that they have that information. Also understand how many college opportunities are actually out there. It's not just D1. It's not just D2, D3. There's NAIA, there's junior college. There are so many actual scholarships that are out there. You just need to know where to look. And a lot of these are amazing schools. I think everybody's so quick to be like, well, the UCLAs of the world. And yes, I'm very lucky that I got to go to UCLA and play there. The UTs of the world. Listen, if you are a junior, you're not going to either of those schools. They already recruited those classes. Could it possibly happen? Yes, but they're not coming for you. They already have your entire recruiting class set. So where do you have to look? You have to know. And you got to look school first, because everybody looks baseball first. Baseball will end for everyone. It ended for me, and I'm very lucky that it happened to end on my terms, but that college degree will continue to go on. And that's what's most important. Baseball is baseball. After that, you got to deal with life. And I think baseball is an incredible tool to help young men and young women become productive adults. So if anyone's interested, check us out, borderyouth.org, and help us get kids into college. We provide academic counseling. We provide NCAA clearinghouse. We provide ACT and SAT tutoring. We have a youth program called Base Play in 2 different counties in Texas. And that program's great because it's for 3rd and 4th graders, and it's a free league to play in. All your equipment is covered. All your coaches are covered. Only thing that a requirement is class participation. You have to show up to class. And if you show up to class, you can play in the league. And it's a wonderful, wonderful program. It's called Base Play. But yeah, please check out everything we're doing at borderyouth.org. And of course, EPBYA, both Instagram and Twitter. And if you guys have any questions about it, please just reach out to me. I'm actually extremely easy to get a hold of. If you just message me on Twitter, I
can vouch for that.
Yeah, like I see it. I see it right there. It pops on my phone, and I usually will respond. I don't have friends or a life.
Well, you responded back to me right away, so I'm like, that's true. I can vouch for that. So perfect. Yeah, and we'll make sure we tweet out all that.
Thanks so much.
So you get that. So yeah, that was the last formal question I have. Why don't we can certainly unmute ourselves and just fire away other questions. Otherwise, we could turn the recording off, kind of steal the Milwaukee idea and just turn it into bar talk and do all of that. Any other questions?
Guys, I'm an open book.
Yeah, Cody, I got another question for you, if you don't mind. What's your take on teaching young people launch angle swings?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm glad. Do not ever. Also, anyone that tells you it's one swing fit all is an idiot. Never talk to them again.
Oh, no, I know that.
There is no such thing as one swing. Launch angle is barely even controlled by the hitter. It's just such a misinterpretation of what hitting is. It's if you honestly don't look to Twitter or don't look to any social media for learning how to hit. It's a nightmare. Everybody and their cousin is apparently a hitting guru, and they have no idea what the hell they're talking about. And it's frightening. And the amount of money they are just stealing from gullible parents is painful. Because and the amount of kids I've had to help fix the problem. At the end of the day, no two athletes are the same. No two hitters are the same. I'm not going to take one guy and be like, okay, now you're doing this because this is what works for this guy. It's not how it works. It just isn't. And anyone that tells you it is quite frankly an idiot, or they're trying to sell something.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Launch angle. Anyone that says the word launch angle to them, just walk away. The word launch angle has no business even being in the lexicon of baseball. You barely control the launch. Launch angle is a result. It's not an actual swing path. These people are insane. It's sad. It honestly is sad.
I was going to say that's tough though, because that's one of the challenges that I have with advanced numbers being a part of broadcasts is that there's a lot of data available, but it's just kind of thrown out. So that's where you're going to get the term launch angle because people see it. It's a number that flashes up. So that's going to get in that kid's head that I need to do it. And that's what they're hearing from the teams.
Yeah, but you have to understand, also the concept of getting on the same exact plane of the baseball is not barely even possible. Like, it's maddening. It truly is maddening. If we ever get into a cage one day, we'll sit down, we can talk about hitting, and I can show you we can talk about the difference, talking about people saying swing down or up. Everyone swings down, period. You have to get to the point of contact. Right. The point of contact's here, and my hands are here. The end, I have to swing down. But by the time I get to my point of contact, it's a swing. It's not a chop. At that point of contact, my barrel is already naturally going up. I don't have to try to do it. It's already happening. I'm not trying to manipulate the ball up or down. I'm trying to manipulate the ball, my barrel, through the baseball. You can't do that by purposely trying to go up, not to mention everybody throws 98. I can't get on the same plane as a baseball that I don't know where the pitch is coming to. So it's all nonsense. Just, you have to make hitters the best version of themselves. And at the end of the day, same thing with athletes. You have to handle an athlete to make them the best version of themselves. I know that sounds like a cliche statement, but it's at the end of the day, it's 100% true. Turning players into what they are not is just going to hurt the player, hurt your team, and quite frankly, hurt your own business because you're a charlatan. Not you, but this person in this scenario. You are awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Cody, I got a question for you. Yeah, this is Jason. I grew up in the neighborhood, by the way, Palisades High School.
Oh, really? Hey, what's up, neighbor?
I went there a little before you went to Samo, though.
You don't
Just
know
a little
that.
bit.
I may look a certain age, but I'm timeless.
But my question for you is this: I'm also a Sabres baseball cards committee. Were you collecting cards in like the late 1990s, and what were some of your favorites if you were?
So my wife doesn't know this, but
Oof.
I have about 10,000 baseball cards in the garage. They're hidden away. I have all of 1988 and 89 Donruss seasons. They're
Nice.
framed and all that. So I got a Griffey rookie card in there. I haven't opened the booklet in a while.
You've got a retirement fund right there.
Oh yeah, that those aren't going anywhere. Believe it or not, yeah, I collected a lot of baseball cards. I dug them. I never got into card trading though, ever. I just always collected them and had them. But this is a pure 90s kid thing. Of my collections of cards, I almost want to run to my garage and grab these. There was a company called Metal that came out in the mid to late 90s, and I don't think it only lasted like 2 years. And they were baseball cards, hologram baseball cards. So it was like a player catching a fly ball, and then the hologram art of them being like a robot. So it's like Tony Gwynn catching a ball here, and it's just his left leg is a rocket and his left arm is like a sword for some reason. It's mad. It's pure madness. I have possibly 300 of these, and I am firmly believe I will retire on these cards. I don't know why, but it's such a, they're the coolest. They're so stupid. I love them. I'm going to get rid of this background. I'm going to put nothing but metal cards up. So yeah, I collected a lot of baseball cards. And of course, obviously, am I allowed to cuss?
Absolutely.
Obviously, my favorite card that I have, and I have it framed, is my Billy Ripken fuckface card. Obviously. That's the most important card that's ever been released. And I told him that to his face the other day, and I don't know if he appreciated that or not.
Awesome. Thank you, Cody.
And I should point out, Jason is a gigantic Garvey fan. So.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Jason, he still dyes his hair jet black, man. It's a look.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a look.
Bruce.
Paul.
Oh, sorry, Paul. You did ask first. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed that you did time overseas and played at various leagues. Can you make some observations about those leagues? What were the fans like, and what was the style of play?
The leagues I'm sadly didn't get to play as much overseas. My overseas playing was in the World Baseball Classic. So my goal was always to play in Korea or Japan. Believe it or not, it was always a dream of mine to play in Japan. I wanted to play in Japan. Even going into college, I knew I wanted at some point to play in Japan. Sadly, I never accomplished this, but I did get to play in Japan in the World Baseball Classic. I played for Team Israel. We started in Korea, won all 3 games, went over to Tokyo, won the first game, dropped the second 2. So I got to play in the Tokyo Dome, which was one of the coolest experiences of my life. 1, the Tokyo Dome is a legendary venue. 2, I played against Japan in the Tokyo Dome. 3, it was the loudest place I'd ever been in my life. You want to talk about fans that love baseball? You think we love baseball? We do not. We don't even like baseball compared to them in Japan. They love baseball. When I say they love baseball, every player. Now keep in mind, this was the Japanese team, not the Hiroshima Carp, not even the Tokyo Giants, not even the Yomiuri Giants. This was just the Japanese team, a team that does not play together nonstop, that fans come and see all the time. The crowd had a theme song that they sang for each player that came to the plate in unison. The entire Tokyo Dome sang a personalized song for each player. It was insane. No one's even thought about writing me a poem, let alone an orchestrated song, let alone one sung by 45,000 people in Tokyo in an enclosed setting. It was loud as hell. It was cool as shit. I just, oh man, those Japanese fans, what I would have given to have played over there for them. Outside of that, their style of play, I mean, not that dissimilar to ours. I think their style of play is, there's certain athletic things that they do that is different. That honestly, when you watch a Japanese pitcher, you'll see something, a leg kick that's slightly different or an arm action that's slightly different. So those are the things that I do notice are a little different. They like to disrupt your timing more often. I think the only guy in the States that I ever see really loves to disrupt somebody's timing is Marcus Stroman. And if he did that to me, I would just simply yell at him, even though I love Marcus Stroman. I think he's one of the coolest guys in baseball. But yeah, it's just a different methods rather than the actual style of play is different. They love them some homers. They love them some bat flips. So they would have loved me except for the bat flipping thing. I never bat flipped. It wasn't because I didn't want to or didn't know the balls were going out, but I'm Jewish. So in the back of my head, whenever I hit a ball, and I hit a few balls very far, but I remember even if I hit it very far, in the back of my head, because I'm Jewish, I have this guy in the back of my head saying, "Oh, look at who's so fancy thing there. Gonna sit there and watch. What if it hits a bird and lands in left field and you're not on second base, Mr. Big Shot? You better take your ass off and get on second." So I took off. So I made sure I could at least get a double just in case the ball was hit by lightning. And if you know anything about my career, that is something that would have happened. So I always made sure I got in scoring position. Even my last home run, which I think I hit 1,000 feet, which my last at bat of my career as a walk-off, even knowing full well I hit that off, I think I sprinted around the bases because I was so excited. Might have been the fastest I ever run in my career, in fact. Wow. The other places I got to play, Venezuela, Panama, Mexico a few times. I never played well in winter ball. I always got sick. It was a great way for me to drop 10 pounds. So I would go down to Mexico and I play for a week, get sick, go home. And and it's funny, I played in Mexico 3 times. I think I never had more than 30 at bats in each one of my seasons. I think 2 of those seasons, I only had like 14 at bats. And I think I hit 188, 188, and 188. And it's funny because when you go to winter ball, this is the funniest thing because you don't get a spring training. You just go. You go cold. So I need a couple of weeks to kind of like see some live at bats, kind of get back into the groove. That's what spring training is for. So I'm going there and they're already 3 weeks into the season. They're all in tip top shape. I'm straight off my couch going like, I have not seen someone throw a ball on a mound in 4 months. Well, and then the best part is they don't let you get your 20 at bats. They just said, "Oh, we need you to hit homers now." I'm like, well, give me 5 more bats and I'll hit you 5. Like, give me a second, get my bearings. So I never did well in winter ball, which I don't care. Winter ball is the worst. I really should have learned how to speak Spanish growing up. That's a big failure on my part. Every time I went down to winter ball, Venezuela, Panama, Mexico, it's a lot of me pointing at a menu. And I grew up in Los Angeles, California. It was very accessible to me for me to learn Spanish. I was just an arrogant, stupid kid that chose not to. Regrets.
There was a question for the World Baseball Classic. What year was that?
That one was 2017. I was on Team Israel. We got pretty far. We were 1 game away from actually going to Dodger Stadium. I do have some issues with that. That's maybe for another time. Whatever, I'll tell you. Jair Jurgens threw a 8-inning shutout against us, and 2 weeks later, you've got popped for steroids. Never been okay with this. This always bothered me. Even more than moving on in the tournament, I think what also bothered me was that prize money differential was like a lot. So the fact that they got to move on with their starting pitcher that beat us and cheated, and they got paid like an extra $10,000 per player as the prize money. And being a guy that was in the minor leagues at the time, really, that's more than my year's worth salary, kind of. It's a bit of a tough pill to swallow. But I also played for them in the qualifier a few years earlier. Somebody just mentioned, I'm looking in the chat. Somebody mentioned Jody Davis. Jody Davis we don't deserve him. Jason Schwartz, who asked that question. Jody Davis is one of the greatest things that this earth has ever produced. Awesome red hair, phenomenal speech patterns. He speaks like this just flat out good old boy. He's responsible. One of my favorite things he used to say to umpires, because when an umpire was having a bad day, he'd be there. He was our hitting coach. He managed for a few weeks as well, but man, he's the best. I remember he sat there and first pitch, bottom of the zone, ball. It was clearly a strike. He's like, "Hey, that ain't down." Next pitch, thrown 10 feet in the bat stop over the pitcher's head. Nothing said. Umpire didn't say anything. Ball 1. You just hear Jody, "That ain't down either." And then I remember another call, pitch right down the middle of the ball. He's like, "Oh, man, I don't know what to tell you. You don't know what you're doing." God, I love that guy. He was the best. Jody
and
Davis.
Harry Carey had a song for him. So
Jody Davis, hitter of the big grand slam, was it?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. I always just remember Jody Davis.
That's all I remember too.
That's all you need to know. Jody Davis is the man.
That could have been his walk-up song. You're talking, Cubs can totally reinvent walk-up music for all the players.
Yes.
They
What
were
are you guys
actually
waiting for?
progressive.
Kind of the Yankees kind of have it with their roll call, but they only do it in the first inning, man. Should do it every single inning. Every time Judge comes up, start the chant.
So Bruce, did you had a question? You're on mute.
Cody, sounds like you have a lot of experience with the Major League Baseball systems. If you had a son, which of the major league teams would you want that son to sign with?
That's a phenomenal question. And that's a question that is basically a way of saying which organization took care of their players and which ones didn't. Here's the ones that didn't when I played for them. The Brewers were a nightmare. The Colorado Rockies should be ashamed of themselves. The ones that did, the rest of them. The Royals were great. I thought the Royals really treated everybody extremely well. At the time when I was there, they were a little messy. The big league side and the minor league side, it was like one hand didn't quite know what the other hand was doing at the time, but it was working. And they were very, extremely good people above everything else. The Diamondbacks was just a wonderful organization. I was so proud to finish those 2 seasons with them. I had credible guys in the front office that I was friendly with. He's recently passed away, but Mike Bell was my head of player development. He was the most wonderful guy, worked so hard, treated every player so well. And when I mentioned those honesty moments, he was that guy who was always honest with me. And I heard some of the worst news ever. In fact, he was in my phone as bad news, Mike Bell, because I knew when he was calling me, it was bad news. It was bad news for me. I'll never forget Mike Bell. God, he passed away of cancer last year. And he was the bench coach, I believe, for the Minnesota Twins at the time. One of the greatest people you could ever meet. Mike Bell, I'll never forget, called me one morning. I was thinking of leading the PCL in home runs, and I thought I was getting called up. I didn't recognize the number. I went back to sleep because it was 6 a.m. I get a text. It's Mike Bell calling me back. I call him back immediately. Hey, Mike, I think I'm going up. He's like, Cody, bad news. I'm like, oh, that's a terrible way to start this conversation. What's up? He's like, we're calling up Christopher Negron. I'm like, that's not bad news. That's awesome. And I'm waiting for him to say, and you're going with him. It's not what he said. He just goes, we need your spot because we need a middle infielder. So we're bringing up a guy from AA to play shortstop. So we need a roster spot because we're sending down a pitcher. I'm like, I'm leading the PCL in home runs. He's like, yep. But remember what we talked about? I said, yeah. I'm your Crash Davis. What do you need me to do? He's like, just take care of the guys and I know this sucks. And this is the worst pill to swallow, but we're putting you on the Phantom. If you want, we'll send you to AA. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. I'll sit here and watch AAA baseball. So I had to be on the Phantom for a month. And, but that's as much of a tough pill that was to swallow because of the guy he was and the organization they were. And, most organizations would just release me. They would just pull me in the office. Hey, we need your spot. You're gone. They weren't that. They were, we know what you bring. You bring too much to the table here. We love you. It's just, we have to do this. Are you willing to put up with it? And I just said, yes. And it was because of guys like Mike Bell and guys in that organization that were so wonderful. And the only other organization that can put up to that pedestal at the time was the Boston Red Sox, who I played for. The Boston Red Sox, I thought, were a wonderful, wonderful organization. So it's not exactly the same organization it was when I left. So I can't speak about what it is now, but it seems as though they very much have their shit together. So I think the Red Sox are doing just fine. So for me, it was the Red Sox and the Diamondbacks. Of course, the Padres. I spent most of my career with them, and I'll always have a very soft spot in my heart for them. But I was there during a lot of turnover. I in my 7 years, I had 5 GMs and 3 owners, and it was, I didn't really get a whole lot of time with the current regime of AJ Preller. I just got that one season. And I love AJ Preller. I mean, at the end of the day, AJ Preller is the guy who called me up and I got to be able to say I was a big leaguer. I only got 1 major league start, but I mentioned Los Angeles. My 1 major league start was at Dodger Stadium. And I got to do that in front of my family and friends and kids I gave hitting lessons to in the off season. They got to see me in the big leagues, and I will forever be indebted to AJ Preller and the San Diego Padres for that, because, you know, I'm one of 20,000 ever. Was it exactly how I wanted my career to go? Absolutely not. But man, I will forever be indebted to that man and that organization. So those are my favorite ones. But yeah, the Rockies sucked and I hated the Brewers. Absolutely hated playing for both those organizations. I was thrilled when both released me.
Hey, Cody, given that you've been around a few years as a player and now as a former player, what are some differences that you've noticed between the better organizations in Major League Baseball and the not as strong ones? I know you just talked about the way they treat their players, but in terms of the, you know, you were talking about statistics earlier, in terms of the statistics used and the organizational style that various Major League Baseball organizations have, what are some differences you've noticed there?
What I've noticed is just that collaborative effort. The teams that can finally take these numbers and realize it's not us versus them, you know, sharing this information is, quite frankly, could be paramount to someone's career and to an organization. Take someone like, you know, that's why the wearable tech thing that the Players Association, though I get why they were fighting against it, it's a losing battle. They're going to get that information no matter what. So quite frankly, the Players Association should have been working with the teams to try to get that information and see the best ways to utilize that information to turn the players into better athletes. But also, guys that are in the big leagues that have been around for a long time are not exactly super open to change. Others are. It's just individual players and what they believe in, what they can do. The best organizations have collaborative efforts with their players. They work with a common goal. And, you know, there's so much information now. That's the thing. The information that we get as fans and, you know, the information we get watching a game, and it's good, detailed information. It doesn't even scratch the surface. It's not even the tip. It's the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg of the information that they actually have. If you knew the information they'd have, you would think you're walking into the Matrix. It's that graphic and that detailed. You want to know something about my breathing? They know it. I want to know something about my, you know, scapular plane on my extension on throwing. They know it, and they can give me that information. It's quite important that they do. And I think the good organizations use the information for the greater good. And I think the bad organizations use it for arbitration.
Great. I think there's one more question in the chat, and I know we're running on two hours here, but did you play with Team Israel with Justine Siegel as a coach?
So Justine was with us in 2016 at the qualifier in Brooklyn. I have done things with Justine since then. Justine Siegel is, you should check out everything she's doing as well. Justine runs an organization, I believe, and please forgive me if I get this wrong, I believe it's called Baseball for All. It's all about basically building women's baseball in the United States. You know, baseball is not huge for women in the United States. I don't think I need to tell you guys that, but it is big elsewhere. And there are good female baseball players in the States who, you know, deserve an opportunity to play at the highest levels, whatever they may be. So I think everything Justine is doing right now is wonderful. I got to, she brought me in to help her with the actresses and actors for the TV version of A League of Their Own that's coming out. So I trained a lot of those actresses with Justine, and I couldn't say enough nice things about Justine. Please check out everything she's doing. I truly believe she is making a dent in baseball in a way that we're not really seeing, and it's not being publicized enough. I really think she's doing amazing stuff. So yeah, please check out Baseball for All. Check out what Justine's doing. Justine Siegel, wonderful person.
Great. Perfect. Well, I feel like we should release you. You gave us 2 hours of your time. This has been absolutely outstanding. I really appreciate that. I will turn off the recording if everybody wants to hang around, just chat for a little bit more. Cody, you're welcome to
I'm right
stay with us. And since it won't be recorded, feel free to say what you need. So.
Uh-oh.